You're listening to State of Arrest. Got my buddy Bill Dorenzo in here, South Florida criminal defense attorney. I'm South Florida criminal defense attorney as well. Today we're going to talk about uniformity in the criminal justice system as far as Florida is concerned. Bill's done a lot of traveling throughout Florida. He used to be a statewide criminal defense attorney. Now he kind of picks and chooses. Isn't that right?
That is true. I spent a lot of time on the road up around the area of, all over, up through Martin, St. Lucie, Orange, Hillsborough, up to Duval, all over the place.
Yeah, there was a time when you were always on the road,
yeah.
Always in different counties. One of the things that I found in practicing in different counties is you'll just see a disparity with regard to sentencing and the types of judges, and you see a little bit of that in any county among the specific judges in that county, in that jurisdiction. But the last thing you want to do in Florida is work out a case. If it's Miami or Palm Beach, you can work out a case and get a global resolution. By global resolution, what I mean is have the cases run concurrent if somebody's got a case in each county. But you don't want to do that when you step out of the Tri-County area, do you?
No, it kind of gets difficult. And, it seems like the bigger the county, it seems like the easier they are on sentencing. Some of the small counties that you go to are extremely difficult and extremely tough when it comes to sentencing.
You get those hanging judges. Very state oriented, and what the state says goes. I represented somebody who had gotten in a cocaine induced psychosis, got in a high speed car chase, started in Broward, went through Palm Beach.
Hopefully he didn't get to Martin.
He got to Martin, and that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
So the global resolution, because there were charges in all three counties of fleeing and eluding and hitting police officers, and where he actually commandeered someone else's automobile.
Ooh.
Right. Thought that they were talking to his girlfriend on a cell phone.
Wow.
So anyway, got to Martin, and Martin was not playing ball with regard to a global resolution at all. But and I think that, I know one of the things that Florida did, and a lot of states throughout the country, is enact laws aimed at creating uniformity, right? But it came by way of minimum mandatory sentencing.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot.
Yes, and we see them from DUIs all the way to drug trafficking.
Yeah, you got it. Minimum mandatories. The sentencing guidelines score sheet, as we talked about, they're trying to make everything fair for everybody with certain point levels. There's certain offense levels, and certain point levels get assigned for that. And depending on how many offenses you have on there, then your criminal history gets a certain offense level and a certain point level. It's all added up, punch it into a formula, and there you have it. If you score over a certain amount, you are required to go to prison unless your lawyer can work something out. If not, fair
or
game.
File a motion for downward or whatnot.
You got it.
Those things aren't available for, let's say, drug trafficking minimum mandatories, or you just can't. The only thing you can do is substantial assistance, but that's a different show. I've been looking into this Florida Justice Reform Act that was signed into law, or a lot of it was signed into law. And a lot of people could argue that Florida would be getting softer on crimes by pulling back or attempting to pull back on some of the minimum mandatory sentencing. But a lot of our laws were enacted due to the emotions, or based on the emotions of people, or the thoughts of people. Now that we're more data-driven, in fact, hardcore going into data-driven, using that empirical data to decide whether or not laws are necessary. We are, as a nation, we incarcerate more people, from what I understand, than any other nation, in any other major nation.
I was surprised when you just told me about that.
I believe that's true.
Wow, yeah.
And Florida is definitely one of the toughest states in the United States, has some of the toughest minimum mandatory laws, toughest sentencing, completely outdoes the feds. Right, you want to be charged federally for drug trafficking when it comes to a minimum mandatory, as opposed to by the state attorneys. But I think it's a good thing. I think the data-driven trend in Florida, although we're kind of behind the times as compared to other states, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that they took aggravated assault out of the 1020 life with regard to a firearm.
Right, yeah.
And
we did that a short time ago, yeah.
Right, we've got a few of those cases that our clients are benefiting from.
No more 3-year minimum mandatory.
No more 3-year minimum mandatory. So what the new laws are doing, without getting into the juveniles, because you know what I was surprised though, actually getting into the juveniles, they were going to lower the age, or at least, I'm sorry, set the age, whereby it would prevent or make it less likely that a state attorney would be allowed to direct file a juvenile as an adult.
I didn't hear about that.
Right, and seeking to reform the juveniles that were going to be direct filed, and they threw that off the floor.
Oh, really?
Florida's tough on the kids, huh?
That did not pass.
That they didn't accept that,
Ah.
just specifically with regard to. I mean, of course, there's the big move for juveniles and for adults to contract with school boards, with private agencies, public agencies, to allow for the education of inmates as long as they have 24 months or less of their sentence left in the system.
Good idea.
But it's not mandated.
Okay.
They just can, which I don't think, did they need a law to be able to contract for education?
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, well,
But I
that's in
don't-
the
yeah.
bill, right?
Yeah.
To allow for that. And I think we're looking towards, or it may have already been done, I don't believe so though. You know, the inmates have to serve 85% of their
Yes.
time.
Unless it's a minimum mandatory. And
Then it's a
if they're
good
serving
point.
minimum mandatory, they got to do day for day.
Day for day,
Yeah.
right? If
Yeah.
you get sentenced to 25 years on a minimum mandatory for, let's say, drug trafficking, which I've said 100,000 times on the show and writing articles and lectures, as you have, a bottle and a half of OxyContin, 2 bottles definitely,
Yeah.
weighs enough to get you a minimum mandatory of 25 years in prison. Judge can't do anything.
Yeah.
Can't show any leniency. That is showing leniency, 25 years in
Yeah,
prison.
I guess, yeah, that's yeah.
Not 85% of 25 years. 25 years,
years of
day
25
for
years,
day,
yeah.
right? I think that something needs to be done with regard to the amount of time or the lengthy sentences that Florida's been issuing. You know, we've gotten nowhere with that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's kind of tough, and I mean, I've got a guy right now who it's his first offense. The offense was pretty egregious. I mean, it was a high-speed fleeing and eluding. He actually struck a police vehicle, and with absolutely positively no criminal history. They are asking for like 15 years in prison.
No kidding. Broward County, of course.
Yeah.
Tight bond
15 years
between
in
Mike
prison.
Satz and law enforcement
Mhm.
here, right? No,
Yeah.
almost a zero tolerance when it involves law enforcement.
That's I was a little taken aback by that, with absolutely no criminal history, and obviously we're going to have to try to do something to get that offer of 15 years down, because it's going to be very difficult to beat the case based on the facts of the case, because it was a long chase. There was a collision right there. He's right there at the scene. So we're going to have to work to see if we can get that 15 years down. Obviously, we're going to explore his mental health issues and things like that, but try to see what we can do for him. But that's a serious offer right there. I was quite surprised.
Yeah, you know, when the police officers instigate the pit maneuver, you know, when they hit the back corner
Mhm.
of the automobile to disable the vehicle,
Mhm.
you know, and that's still I've seen used as an aggravating factor, the accident, even though instituted by the police
Right,
officer.
yeah, it was their fault. Yeah.
I don't want to ask you to go into the facts of the case, but is there any? Maybe I will. Is there any intentional act to hit the police officer? Or is that what the state is saying?
That I think that is kind of still up for debate. But his car definitely rammed into a police car
I see.
after a high-speed chase.
If anything happens, and when I say anything, if you wind up in a police encounter for which you are arrested, and there is a mark on you or anything else, and it could be argued that it was put there by the police, well, you're going to be charged with aggravated
Sure.
battery or battery on a law enforcement officer, or charged with ramming that police car.
Yeah.
And Broward County is going to side with the law enforcement, the government on that one.
That's
every time.
Yep. That's what experience tells us.
Bill, thanks so much. Thanks
All
for
right.
coming down today.
Good time. Thank
I'll
you.
see you next week.
All right.
You've been listening to State of Arrest with William Dorenzo, me, William Moore. Until next week, thanks for listening.